And I just want to say it's like total honor to be here with you, Anderson. And, of course, I see you on the screen a number of times a week, and I just wonder, how the hell do you keep it up? In the toxic atmosphere of,
The truth is I'm heavily medicated, but... kidding. Well, I mean, I think that's a good starting point, because I do think for many people, this is, whether it's a daily practice of mindfulness or just however one practices it, how do you, particularly in this day and age and in this particular time in our country's history where, talk about non-judgmental awareness, about trust, about, seeing things with fresh eyes, with beginner's mind. How do you cultivate that, given the world of technology that we're all carrying around with us in our pockets, and given the political world that's happening all around us?
Yeah, and in a sense, your life, because of your job and your assignments, is like at the absolute front line of all of that. So by comparison, we don't have any problems at all, no stress in terms of being sent off here or there, or having to deal with, a steady stream of pundits who all have different ideas about how great things are, how horrible things are, and are always fighting with each other. So to cut to the chase, really, I think the meditation practice, and this is often not really understood, is about not making friends and making enemies and falling into camps, even inside yourself, because we can be very unfriendly to ourselves as well as to others, depending on the filters that we put up. But to actually understand that the world is actually one. It's one seamless whole. And so what we're talking about is a kind of a non-dual way of actually not getting into ussing and theming. And that's very, very hard to do, because...
Yeah, have you watched cable news? That's sort of...
It's what it is. But the question, I think, from an evolutionary point of view, because of like the challenges that we're facing as a species now, is can we find some elements within ourselves that are truly native to us and that we're born with, we don't have to acquire, that can allow us to hold the whole thing of all of the different dissipative forces and toxic forces and violent forces, which are also to some degree inside of ourselves, and hold them in a way that's not only benign, but that in some sense cultivates a certain kind of caring equanimity that allows for a kind of new view of the whole thing that might lead to healing and transformation, or at least to learning and growing. And that wouldn't be Anderson's responsibility or mine. It would be a distributive responsibility that we all, in some sense, need to take, because in some sense you could say we're all the cells of the one body politic, the planet, if you will. But no one cares except us.
You talk about, though, in mindfulness, you talk about acceptance and being non-judgmental and non-judgmental awareness. At a time when, people are so polarized, I think people can interpret acceptance or being non-judgmental as being passive and just accepting this is the reality, and it can't be changed. And
so glad you're bringing this up, because this is an absolutely fundamental point. And so, in terms of my working operational definition of mindfulness, that it is the awareness that arises from paying attention on purpose in the moment, non-judgmentally. This notion of moment-to-moment non-judgmental attending doesn't mean, the non-judgmental doesn't mean that we won't have judgments. It means that we'll have judgments galore, but we'll be aware that they're judgments in a certain way and that they have physiological effects on us, and we tense and we contract, and the jaw gets out, and we get angry and we get violent in a certain way. And then recognizing that the awareness is in some sense another dimension that's available to us as a human being, that if you inquire about your own awareness, is that tense, is that stressed, is that taking sides? The answer is no, it doesn't have to be taking sides. It can be a new perspective in which to see the idiocy and the failure and the violence and the harming that comes out of that, and that would be akin to what I would call wisdom. And I think that's what we need as human beings at this point in time. Now, the track record, depending on how you look at it, doesn't look so good. But On the other hand, somebody like Steve Pinker in his book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, I mean, you could look at things that things are actually improving. I mean, 100 years ago, women were property in this country of men. Is that not true? And this is, some people call this Columbus Day. But this is, now being called Indigenous Peoples Day, and on the New York Times front page today, there's conversations about what Columbus really did that we're never taught in history. So there's a certain way in which I think evolutionarily it's time for us human beings to figure out how to transcend the dualistic disregard of the other, all this othering, the racism, the sort of implicit biases, through the only way we have, the only instrument we have, awareness itself. It's unbelievably powerful, and as I said, it's not something we have to get, it's something we have to cultivate access to under fire. So in a sense, even the President of the United States, he then becomes part of the curriculum. Did we ask for it? Well, yes, some people asked for it, some people didn't, for all sorts of complex reasons. But how do we actually find a wise way to be in relationship to it? And I would say, just to close this out, it would be nice if we could take the 1,000-year view, because the general trend is in the right direction. And Robert Sapolsky just wrote a book called Behave, which I recommend all of you to read, that falls on the side of we can actually transform as